Hello everyone. In today's video we're going to talk about this interesting identification bracelet / identification tag. So this is an object that was initially found in the western desert in Egypt. During one of my visits there, the Bedouins told me that a guy had found a few things from the war, like accumulated them over the years. And this is the picture of the things as they showed it to me at the time. This is pretty typical. You can see there's a mix of random stuff. So British coins, Italian uniform stars, a British badge. And then this weird thing that caught my eye, which is this identification bracelet. So the guy wanted a small fortune for it because this stuff is hard to find. They just find it randomly when they're walking around in the desert and stuff. But I figured this would be an interesting research project, so I bought it from him, even though it was much more expensive than in Europe or from a collector, let's say. So what do we see on this tag, on this bracelet? There's some letters here. It looks like LOE, a number 15948, and then more letters. It looks like DJD. And on the back of the bracelet, there's nothing special, and it's made out of aluminum, and the quality isn't very good, as you can see here. Like, it's just something handmade, either by a soldier or perhaps by some kind of local merchant or craftsman. Probably some recycled aluminum from some kind of military equipment, I would suspect. So now the question is, who does this tag belong to? What country would he have been from? And the first thing I thought with this tag is that it's strange that the guy wrote his army number, but not his full name. So it's like he's considering his army number more important than his name. And then you see it has this kind of interesting shape. And I don't know why, for some reason I felt that this shape might be something, you know, maybe more like Asian, so maybe I thought this belonged to an Indian soldier. Anyway, those were just my initial thoughts. So the thing was found in the western desert in Egypt. I'm not sure where. It could be anywhere, you know, Alamein or Solum or Mersa Matruh. I really don't know, because when these Bedouins have stuff, you know, you don't know where it comes from. And when you ask them, then you don't know if they're telling you the truth or not when they tell you. So Egypt is a very interesting country for World War II history because there were 10 armies from 10 different countries battling on the ground. So first the Axis countries were represented by Germany and Italy. And then from the British side, well, from the Commonwealth side, let's say, you had the United Kingdom, but also India, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa that sent troops. So those were the main troops on the ground. And then you also had some small units from Free France, Free Poland, and Free Greece. And then in the British Air Force, the RAF, you had Canadian people as well. And then it's possible there were also people from other countries that I might not have managed to think about here when making this video. Some smaller countries, some smaller colonies, some obscure places. So let's look at the first possibility. Could it be German or Italian? So I've made videos about German and Italian ID tags already, and if you haven't seen them, you can go and look at them. They explain a bunch of details. And basically, Germans had the serial number on their dog tag, but they didn't mean anything without the unit, because every unit had its own serial number. So basically the serial number on its own is meaningless. And it's similar for the Italian dog tags. They also have a serial number, but there were more than 100 military districts, and each district gave its own serial numbers out. So only a serial number without the region does not mean anything. And furthermore, you see both the Germans and Italians had these very good metallic identification tags. And you don't usually find German or Italian bracelets. It's something rather rare. For Germans, almost unheard of, and for Italians, I don't have that much experience. But they didn't have to make these tags. And so that eliminates Germany and Italy. So basically, the tag is probably from an Allied soldier, that means, probably from a Commonwealth soldier. And let's look, what type of dog tags did the Commonwealth soldiers have? This I've never mentioned before. So basically, they had an extremely badly designed tag. Why? Because of what the tag was made out of. You see, it looks like a piece of cardboard, and it was actually made out of some kind of compressed fiber. And this compressed fiber did not resist burial, it did not resist fire, and apparently it also didn't resist humidity too well. So it was an identification tag that was really not resistant on the long term. And the consequences of that is that you never find them on battlefields, or almost never find them. And when the bodies of British soldiers are found, or Commonwealth soldiers are found, usually the identification tag is long gone. So it's another one of these designs that defies its own purpose. You make an identification tag to identify a dead person who will probably stay buried on the battlefield for months or years, is very likely to be in a place that burns down like a vehicle or airplane, and they make it out of this perishable material. So very bad ID tag design. And then when it comes to the inscriptions, they're reasonably okay. There's a serial number, there's the guy's family name, they have the person's initials, which I don't think is very smart. You know, I mean, it wouldn't cost very much to put a person's complete name. And that's about it, yeah. So the Commonwealth soldiers weren't idiots. They understood that their identification tags, or they called them identity discs, were poorly designed. So they often made themselves bracelets out of metal, so that if they were killed, they were hoping that that bracelet would be a bit more resistant than their official type of identification tag. So this one here is neat because it's for a woman. And I haven't been able to research it because British World War II service records are still not in the public domain. They're reserved for family members. This is another improvised tag, quite obviously also for a guy who was in Egypt at some point, since you can see the Sphinx on it. And these are some souvenirs from my own grandfather, who was a pilot in the RCAF. And you can see that he also got himself an identification bracelet made, which was a particularly good idea for pilots, since, of course, a pilot is at higher risk than anybody to have a fiery death. So let's get back to the ID tag. I posted it on an internet forum to ask for some advice, you know, because multiple brains work better than just my brain on its own. And somebody said something very, very smart. He said that these letters are probably COE, meaning Church of England. So at first I thought that was a bit surprising, but then I looked at the ID tags, and sure enough, what do they have on them here? You see COE for Church of England. And just a little discretion here for 1 second. If you don't know anything about the Church of England, it's an English king, Henry VII, who, when he wanted to annul his marriage with his wife, the Pope wouldn't let him, so he just decided to hell with the Pope, and now I'm going to be the head of the Church of England, and we're not going to be Catholics anymore. So that's how the Church of England started. So to summarize the information from this identification tag, or this bracelet. So COE is apparently Church of England. The number is presumably a serial number, and then, since we know that the upper letters are Church of England, presumably the lower letters, DJD, are the soldier's initials. So let's look into all these countries that were involved and see which ones might be able to match this bracelet. So the way I did this is I took the list of people who are buried at the Alamein cemetery. This is the Alamein cemetery, by the way. And this is an old picture because you see in the background there's still relatively clean desert. And nowadays, of course, the city is caught up with it, and there's buildings in the background. And I think pretty soon it's just going to be surrounded by buildings. So there's a list of names of all the people buried in the Alamein cemetery that can be found on the Commonwealth War Graves Commission website. And it's an absolutely excellent website for research, because you can do your research in all kinds of different ways, by cemetery, by name, by serial number, by whatever you want. You can classify your information however you want, and you can even just press a button and it downloads a whole Excel table. So it's an absolutely excellent research tool. Congratulations to the Commonwealth War Graves Commission for that. The sites for French or German or American soldiers are not at all as useful or practical. So on this website, it lists all the people buried in Alamein, so they're from all the countries that are involved, and it also lists their serial numbers, and that's what I'm interested in. I want to know who this serial number might have belonged to. So I looked at each of the nationalities individually. Here it's Australians, and you see that all their serial numbers start by letters, so that doesn't match our bracelet, so Australia can apparently be eliminated. Then there's Canadians from the Air Force. Their serial numbers also start with a letter, so they can also be eliminated. Then it's Indians. So some of their serial numbers have 5 digits, just like the bracelet, so they should be taken into account. Perhaps the bracelet belonged to an Indian, even though then it would be a bit strange that it has this Church of England inscription. The next country is New Zealand, and you can see they have lots of 5-digit serial numbers, including this one here that's very similar to the bracelet, so they have to be taken into account. Next is South Africa, so also 5-digit numbers, so they could also be a match. Some numbers have a letter in front, I'm not sure why. The next country is the United Kingdom, and their serial numbers have 7 digits or 6 digits. So they're too long and they do not correspond. So apparently the tag did not belong to an English soldier. There is a little exception for that. When you see English officers, they had a different serial number system apparently, and some of them do have 5-digit serial numbers. So perhaps the ID tag belonged to a British officer, even though I have a very hard time imagining a British officer of that time period wearing this such a poorly made aluminum ID tag without rank or anything like that. So from analyzing the list of burials at Alamein, we can eliminate Australia, Canada, and British enlisted men. And so what's left over is pretty much British officers, India, New Zealand, South Africa, and then perhaps France, Poland, or Greece. But I have no idea what their ID tags looked like. I mean, I don't know what their serial numbers looked like, especially these free forces. And there were very few of these soldiers. So, and plus with Church of England, I mean, I think we can pretty much eliminate the possibility of these people having been French, Polish, or Greek, the owner of the bracelet. So now I have these leftover possibilities. So I researched each one. So for the Indian Army, I have no idea whether archives exist nowadays, but we're, let's say, lucky, even though the soldier was not lucky. An Indian soldier with serial number 15948 was killed in action during the war, and you can see his name was Hark, which does not match the initials of the dog tag, of the bracelet, which are DJD. Then for New Zealand, I got the file of soldier with serial number 15948, and his initials don't match. You see, Keith Desmond Rumler, and furthermore he was only in the army for about 11 days because he had had a motorcycle accident a few years before and had weakness in his left ankle, so he was medically discharged. Then I managed to get the South African file for soldier 15948. You can see it's a guy called Ellis Harris Kaplan. So once again, the initials do not match, DJD. And this guy actually was in Egypt during the war. You can see his documents say he disembarked in Suez in 1941 and then re-embarked back home in 1943. But the initials don't match, so it's not him apparently. So now we've eliminated pretty much everything. The one thing left over is British officers, and like I said earlier, British service records still are not public yet, so I didn't really know what to do about that. And then some people on the internet kindly told me that you can look in the London Gazette for people who are mentioned in it, so officers and stuff. So it was not very, I mean, they have a website that's not very practical to use, but I did find some matches. So this guy here, Lieutenant Ashwell, he has serial number 15948. But the letters don't match, and plus this is from 1955. I don't even know if he was in the army during World War II. But presumably no other British officers would have had this serial number, but I'm not sure because this says Indian Army, so did the Indian Army have their own system separate from the British officers? I'm really not sure. And then in the Gazette I found another guy, so this is from 1942, and there's another Indian Army person, so enlisted man this time, with serial number 15948. So I don't really understand. We already found an Indian guy with serial number 15948 who died in the war, and now there's a second guy with the same serial number. So how does that make any sense? I'm not really sure. And then out of desperation, I checked the Australians anyways, even though they're not supposed to match. And you can see the Australian guy with serial number 15948 was called Ellis Gordon Francis, so that does not match the initials on the tag. And then there's some other ones, but they're from World War I or post-war, and their initials also do not match. So basically, we've eliminated all the possibilities, and we didn't find any match. So what's going on? Are the initials maybe something else? Do they maybe correspond to the geographical area the guy was from? Do they correspond to his military unit? Do they, who knows? Do you have any ideas, you know? Is there maybe a country that I left out? You know, for example, maybe some British guy was in the French Foreign Legion and had this ID tag that said Church of England because he was British. It certainly doesn't seem very likely. Another possibility, is this bracelet really from World War II? Is it maybe from World War I? Because fighting also happened, or the fighting also happened in the area during World War I. So I don't know. And this is why I'm making the video once again, to ask for help. So does anybody have any ideas of who this bracelet could have belonged to? Ideas that I didn't already try to explore in this video. If you have any ideas, please write me an email or write a comment, and I'll be happy to hear from you. So this is a bracelet that was made to identify a soldier, and as we saw for several other types of ID tags, or several other ID tags that I mentioned in other videos, you actually cannot identify the guy, apparently, based on this, or at least not identify him with any ease. So why didn't he write his country on the ID tag? Why didn't he write his hometown? Why didn't he write his name? Why did he just write this serial number that, as we saw, can correspond to a whole bunch of different people? So another poorly designed tag. At least this isn't something official, it's just something handmade, so you can understand it's badly designed. And I'm hoping that one day we'll be able to solve this case, you know. So send me your ideas if you have any, and you can also contact me at my email as usual if you have any research projects that you need help on. So have a nice day, and see you in the next video.